Have you ever felt like you were losing your mind in a relationship? Like your memory was failing you, your emotions were too intense, and maybe, just maybe, you were the problem all along? If you've ever questioned your own sanity because someone else insisted your reality wasn't real, then you need to hear this. What if I told you that this isn't your imagination and it's not your fault? What if I told you that what you experienced has a name and that prolonged exposure to it literally rewires your brain, damaging the parts responsible for memory and emotional regulation? This psychological weapon has been studied extensively, and the results are terrifying. In this video, I'm going to show you the 7 most devastating gaslighting techniques that manipulators use to destroy your sense of reality. More importantly, I'm going to give you the exact words and strategies to protect yourself, because knowledge is your shield, and today you're going to become unbreakable. Technique number 1, reality distortion. That never happened. Picture this scenario. You have a crystal clear memory of a conversation that happened just last week. You remember the exact words, the tone, even where you were sitting. But when you bring it up, they look at you with genuine confusion and say, "That never happened. You're imagining things. Are you sure you're okay?" This is reality distortion, the foundation of all gaslighting. It's not just disagreeing with you, it's the systematic denial of events that you know occurred. The gaslighter doesn't just say you're wrong, they express concern for your mental health, making you question not just the memory, but your entire ability to perceive reality correctly. Here's what's happening in your brain during this process. When someone confidently denies something you clearly remember, it creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. Your brain has 2 conflicting pieces of information, your memory and their absolute certainty. Because humans are social creatures who evolved to survive in groups, we're biologically wired to doubt ourselves when the group disagrees with us, even if the group is just one person. But here's the terrifying part. Neuroscientist Dr. Ariel Scheuket's research shows that when this happens repeatedly, it actually damages your hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for forming and storing memories. The constant stress of having your reality denied floods your system with cortisol, which literally shrinks this crucial brain region. You're not imagining that your memory is getting worse. It actually is. The gaslighter knows exactly what they're doing. They choose to deny things that are important to you, things that made you feel hurt or upset. They never deny positive memories, only the ones that would hold them accountable. This creates a pattern where you begin to doubt your negative experiences while accepting their version of events. Your protection strategy: document everything. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're protecting your sanity. When someone says, "That never happened," respond with, "I remember it differently and my memory is valid." Don't argue about the details. Simply state your truth and move on. Remember, you're not trying to convince them. You're preserving your reality. Technique number 2, emotional invalidation. You're too sensitive. You express hurt about something they did. Maybe they were late to something important, or they made a comment that stung. Instead of acknowledging your feelings, they flip the script. You're being too sensitive. You always overreact. You make everything into a big deal. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about their behavior. It's about your supposed character flaws. This technique is called emotional invalidation, and it's devastatingly effective because it weaponizes your emotional responses against you. Every time you feel hurt, angry, or upset, you're taught that these feelings are wrong, excessive, or proof of your instability. Over time, you stop trusting your emotional responses entirely. Here's what makes this so insidious. Emotions exist for a reason. They're your internal alarm system, telling you when something isn't right. When someone consistently tells you that your alarm system is broken, you stop listening to it. You begin to normalize treatment that should concern you, dismiss red flags that should warn you, and stay in situations that are damaging your mental health. The psychological impact is profound. Studies on emotional invalidation show that people who experience it chronically develop higher rates of anxiety, depression, and something called emotional dysregulation, the inability to understand and manage your own feelings. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive from constantly being told your fears and concerns are irrational. But here's what your gaslighter doesn't want you to know. There is no such thing as being too sensitive. Sensitivity is not a character flaw, it's a personality trait. Some people are more sensitive than others, just like some people are taller or have better hearing. Would you tell someone they're too tall? Your sensitivity level is information about how you process the world, not evidence that you're defective. The gaslighter uses your sensitivity against you because sensitive people often make the best partners. They're empathetic, caring, and attentive to others' needs. But they're also easier to manipulate because they desperately want to avoid causing problems or being too much. Your protection strategy. When someone says you're too sensitive, respond with, "My feelings are valid, regardless of how big or small they seem to you." Don't defend your right to feel. Simply acknowledge that you do feel, and that's enough. Your emotions are data, not drama. Trust them. Technique number 3, crazy making, the reality shuffle. This is where gaslighting becomes truly sophisticated. The gaslighter doesn't just deny things happened, they create elaborate alternative versions of events. They'll admit something happened, but completely change the context, your reactions, or the significance of the event. "Yes, I was talking to my ex, but you're making it sound like something it wasn't. You're being paranoid. I was just being nice." This technique is called crazy making because it's designed to make you question your ability to interpret situations correctly. They don't deny the facts entirely. They just twist them until you feel like you're losing your grip on reality. It's like living in a funhouse where all the mirrors distort your reflection, but everyone insists that's really how you look. Here's the psychology. Humans need coherent narratives to make sense of their experiences. When someone constantly reshuffles the pieces of your shared reality, your brain goes into overdrive trying to make sense of contradictory information. This creates what researchers call learned helplessness. You become so overwhelmed by conflicting versions of events that you give up trying to understand what's real. The neurological impact is severe. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and reality testing, becomes chronically overstimulated. Meanwhile, your stress response system is constantly activated, flooding your body with hormones that impair memory formation and recall. This is why victims of gaslighting often describe feeling foggy or unable to think clearly. What makes this technique particularly cruel is that gaslighters often sprinkle in just enough truth to make you doubt your instincts. They might acknowledge that they were flirting, but insist you're reading too much into it. They confirm your observations, but invalidate your interpretations, leaving you feeling like a detective who can gather evidence, but can never solve the case. The gaslighter's goal isn't to win arguments. It's to exhaust your ability to trust your own judgment. They want you to become so confused and overwhelmed that you defer to their version of reality by default. When you stop questioning their behavior and start questioning your perceptions, they've won. Your protection strategy. Keep a reality journal. Write down incidents as they happen, including your emotional responses and interpretations. When they try to shuffle the reality deck, you have your original hand to refer to. Remember, Your first instinct is usually correct. That gut feeling you had in the moment, trust it more than their revised version of events. Technique number 4, triangulation, bringing in the flying monkeys. Just when you think you're gaining clarity about what's happening, they introduce other people's opinions. My mum thinks you're being unreasonable too. Everyone at work agrees with me. Even your friend Sarah said you were acting strange lately. Suddenly, it's not just their word against yours. It's their word, plus an entire army of people who apparently think you're the problem. This is triangulation, and it's one of the most devastating techniques because it exploits our fundamental need for social belonging. Humans are pack animals. Being rejected by the group historically meant death. When a gaslighter makes you believe that everyone thinks you're wrong, unstable, or problematic, they're activating your deepest survival fears. But here's what's really happening. Most of these people haven't actually said what the gaslighter claims they said. They're lying about others' opinions to isolate you and make you feel like everyone is against you. Even when they do discuss you with others, they're presenting a carefully curated version of events that paints you as irrational and them as the long-suffering victim. The few people who might actually agree with them, they're often either flying monkeys, people who've been manipulated into doing the gaslighter's bidding, or they're getting a completely different story. Remember, gaslighters are expert storytellers. They can present the same situation in wildly different ways depending on their audience. The psychological impact is devastating. When you believe that everyone thinks you're the problem, you stop seeking support from others. You become increasingly isolated, which makes you more dependent on the gaslighter for social connection and reality checking. This isolation also means you have fewer outside perspectives to help you recognize what's really happening. Research shows that social isolation literally changes brain chemistry, increasing cortisol levels and decreasing serotonin production. You become more anxious, more depressed, and less able to think clearly. Exactly what the gaslighter wants. They need you confused and dependent to maintain control. What's particularly insidious about triangulation is how it makes you turn against potential allies. You might avoid talking to friends or family because you're afraid they'll confirm that you're the problem. You become complicit in your own isolation, cutting off the very people who might help you see clearly. Your protection strategy. Go directly to the source. If they claim someone said something about you, ask that person directly. Most of the time, you'll discover the conversation never happened or was completely misrepresented. Build your own support network and don't let anyone else control your relationships. Remember, healthy people don't recruit others to fight their battles. Technique number 5, the apology trap. I'm sorry you feel that way. After a particularly harsh gaslighting session, they might offer what sounds like an apology. I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. It sounds reasonable, even considerate, but hidden in this pseudo-apology is perhaps the most sophisticated form of gaslighting of all. This isn't actually an apology, it's blame disguised as remorse. They're not apologizing for their actions. They're expressing regret that you had the wrong emotional response to their reasonable behavior. They're simultaneously appearing to take the high road while reinforcing that your feelings are the real problem. Real apologies acknowledge wrongdoing. I'm sorry I spoke to you that way. It was wrong, and I understand why it hurt you. Gaslighting apologies focus on your reaction. I'm sorry you're upset about something that wasn't a big deal. See the difference? One validates your experience, the other dismisses it while appearing magnanimous. This technique is particularly effective because it exploits your desire for resolution. When you're hurt and confused, you desperately want to move forward and feel better. These fake apologies feel like progress, like they're finally acknowledging the problem. You want to believe they're genuine, so you accept them even though something feels off. What's happening psychologically is that you're being trained to accept responsibility for their actions. Every time you accept one of these pseudo-apologies, you're agreeing that the problem was your perception or reaction, not their behavior. Over time, you internalize this message and begin apologizing to them for your own hurt feelings. The neurological impact is significant. Your brain's reward system actually responds to these fake apologies because they temporarily reduce the stress of conflict. This creates a trauma bond. You become grateful for minimal acknowledgement of your pain, even when that acknowledgement is actually another form of invalidation. The most devastating part of the apology trap is how it prevents real resolution. Since they never actually acknowledge wrongdoing, they never change their behavior. The same patterns repeat endlessly because from their perspective, they've already apologized and moved on. If you're still upset, that's your problem, not theirs. Your protection strategy: learn the anatomy of a real apology. It should include acknowledgement of specific wrongdoing, acceptance of responsibility, expression of genuine remorse, and a commitment to change. Anything less is manipulation dressed up as accountability. When someone says, "I'm sorry you feel that way," respond with, "What specifically are you apologizing for?" Watch them scramble. Technique number 6, projection. Your pain is their weapon. Here's where gaslighting becomes truly diabolical. The gaslighter takes your deepest insecurities, your biggest fears about yourself, and throws them back at you during conflicts. If you've confided that you worry about being too needy, they'll call you clingy during arguments. If you've shared that you fear being like your unstable parent, they'll accuse you of acting just like them when you're upset. This is projection, using your vulnerabilities as ammunition. They take the intimate knowledge they've gained about your inner world and weaponize it against you. It's like giving someone the keys to your house and then having them rob you with your own spare key. The psychological devastation is immense because it transforms your greatest source of safety, emotional intimacy, into your greatest threat. You shared these fears because you trusted them to help you work through them. Instead, they use them to destabilize you when it's convenient. This betrayal cuts deeper than almost anything else because it violates the basic trust that makes relationships possible. What makes projection so effective is that it contains just enough truth to stick. You do worry about being needy, so when they call you clingy, part of you wonders if they're right. You are afraid of repeating your family patterns, so when they compare you to your unstable parent, you question whether you're becoming what you fear most. But here's the crucial difference. When you worry about these traits in yourself, you're trying to grow and improve. When they throw these fears at you, they're trying to control and diminish you. Your self-awareness is a strength they're turning into a weakness, using your capacity for self-reflection against you. The brain science is revealing. When someone attacks your core identity, it activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your anterior cingulate cortex and right anterior insula light up just as they would if someone had physically struck you. The phrase "words can hurt" is literally true at a neurological level. Projection also serves another purpose. It deflects attention from their behavior onto your character. Instead of discussing what they did wrong, you're now defending yourself against accusations about who you are as a person. It's a masterful redirect that keeps them from ever having to be accountable for their actions. The most insidious aspect is how projection makes you afraid to be vulnerable in the future. You learn that sharing your fears and insecurities gives others power to hurt you, so you become increasingly guarded and isolated. This emotional self-protection actually confirms their narrative that you're defensive and closed off. Your protection strategy: separate your growth work from their attacks. Your self-awareness and desire to improve are strengths, not weaknesses. When they throw your fears back at you, remind yourself, I told you this because I trusted you, not because it's true. Consider keeping your deepest vulnerabilities away from people who might use them as weapons. Technique number 7, the final weapon: future faking and false hope. This is the technique that keeps you trapped long after you should have left. Just when you're ready to walk away, when you've finally had enough, they become the person you originally fell for. They acknowledge your concerns, promise to change, maybe even go to therapy or read self-help books. They paint a beautiful picture of how different things will be, how much better your relationship could become if you just give them one more chance. This is future faking, and it's the most psychologically complex form of gaslighting because it exploits your capacity for hope and love. They're not just manipulating your present reality, they're manipulating your dreams and your belief in human potential for growth and change. The timing is never accidental. These promises always come when you're at your breaking point, when you've finally gathered enough strength to consider leaving. They have an uncanny ability to sense when they're losing control, and they respond with exactly what you've been desperate to hear for months or years. What makes this so devastating is that the promises often seem genuine. They might cry, share vulnerable insights about their childhood, or acknowledge specific behaviors they need to change. For a brief window, you see glimpses of emotional maturity and self-awareness that give you hope that real change is possible. But here's the psychological trap. You're not responding to evidence of actual change. You're responding to the promise of change. Your brain's reward system floods you with dopamine when you imagine the future they're describing. You become addicted to the potential of the relationship rather than accepting the reality of it. The neuroscience is brutal. This cycle of hope and disappointment actually creates the same brain patterns as gambling addiction. Your brain releases powerful chemicals when they promise to change, creating a literal addiction to their potential rather than acceptance of their patterns. The intermittent reinforcement, occasional good behavior followed by return to old patterns, is the most addictive behavioral schedule known to psychology. What's particularly cruel is that some change might actually occur, temporarily. They might be more attentive, more considerate, or more communicative for weeks or even months. This real improvement makes you believe that lasting change is possible, that your patience and love are finally paying off. But inevitably, they revert to previous patterns, often worse than before. The cycle becomes incident, confrontation, promise to change, temporary improvement, gradual return to old patterns, new incident. Each cycle makes you more invested in seeing the change through, more convinced that you just need to be patient enough, loving enough, or strong enough to help them become who they claimed they could be. Your protection strategy: judge people by their patterns, not their promises. Look at what they've done consistently over time, not what they say they'll do in the future. Real change is demonstrated through sustained action over months and years, not dramatic promises during crisis moments. Remember, if someone can become the person you need during emergencies, they've always had that capacity. The question is why they only use it when they're about to lose you. Let me tell you something that might change how you see everything that's happened to you. None of this was your fault. Not your sensitivity, not your reactions, not your need for clarity or validation. You weren't asking for too much, expecting too much, or demanding too much. You were asking for basic human decency, and someone convinced you that was unreasonable. The 7 techniques we've covered: reality distortion, Emotional invalidation, crazy-making, triangulation, fake apologies, projection, and future faking are not random behaviors. They're calculated strategies designed to systematically dismantle your ability to trust yourself. Every time you questioned your memory, your emotions, or your perceptions, you weren't being weak or paranoid. You were responding normally to abnormal treatment. Here's what I want you to understand. Gaslighting works by making you believe that love requires you to doubt yourself. But the opposite is true. Real love enhances your connection to your own truth, makes you feel more like yourself, not less. Healthy relationships make your inner voice stronger, not quieter. Your recovery starts with this simple truth. Your perception of reality is valid. Your emotional responses are information, not evidence of instability. Your memories matter. Your feelings count. Your boundaries deserve respect. You are not too much, too sensitive, or too demanding. You are exactly as you should be. The brain damage from gaslighting can heal. Your hippocampus can recover. Your amygdala can calm down. Your prefrontal cortex can regain its clarity. But healing requires you to stop accepting treatment that damages these systems in the first place. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. Recovery is possible, but it starts with protecting yourself from further harm. Surround yourself with people who enhance your sense of reality, not people who require you to doubt it. Build relationships where your truth is welcomed, your emotions are respected, and your growth is celebrated. Remember, the person who truly loves you will never require you to question your own sanity to maintain their comfort. Love illuminates truth. It doesn't obscure it. Trust that voice inside you that's been trying to warn you all along. It was right. You were right. You are not crazy. I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me which of these 7 techniques felt most familiar to you. Your story matters, and sharing it might help someone else recognize what they're experiencing. Remember, we heal in community, not in isolation. If this video helped you see your situation more clearly, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is help someone else recognize the truth about their own experience. Subscribe to this channel if you want more content about recognizing manipulation, building healthy relationships, and trusting yourself again. Your support helps this information reach people who desperately need to understand that they're not losing their minds. They're being systematically told they are. Most importantly, remember this. Recognizing gaslighting is the first step toward freedom. You've just taken that step. The journey back to yourself starts now.